So taking responsibility for past attraction patterns. So we're talking about attracting the girl. So I want you to write this down. Who you attract is a reflection of yourself, right? So I'm going to go through this short list, and I want you guys to put down in the chat what numbers you identify with. Okay? So I hold my tongue even when something is bothering me because I don't want to be a burden to anyone. I just want peace and a stress-free life. I often hide parts of myself from my crush because I am driven by their approval. I am always the one to initiate text conversations with my crush. I believe I have to go above and beyond with gifts in order to win her over or keep her around. I believe that there are two types of men, nice guys or jerks, and jerks always win.
Guys, wait until the list is done and then identify.
Yeah. I am more concerned about if she likes me than if I like her. Every time I'm with her, I feel comfortable and not myself. I can get through the first few dates all right, but then it always falls off. And I don't trust women because I've been lied to or cheated on. I don't want to ruin all the progress I've made with her or come off creepy, so I rarely or never sexually escalate. All right, so put the numbers in the chat of which ones that you identify with. Okay, 1, 2, 5, and 6. Adam's like all over the place. Yes. Okay.
He's like, can you add a 12 for me?
Okay. So now that you guys identify with these patterns, I want you guys to practice and debate yourself. What's a healthier perspective? So I want you guys to choose one of the one that you identify the most with, and I want you guys to write down how your idealized self will act in the future, how the new version, the new and approved 2.0 version of yourself is going to act differently. All right. And you guys, you can either write that down, or you guys can also put it in the chat as well. I think it's always good to write that down. So you have this. I want this book to be your notebook. Okay. Take a few more seconds. I won't be afraid to express who I really am. Yes, Adam, that's good. Good. Okay. So all of these patterns are driven by fear, right? So fear of I'm not good enough, fear of burdening someone, feeling that, I'm too weird or I'm too creepy. These are all driven by fear. So the best way to get over fear is to go through it, recognize what it looks like, and identify how it manifests when attracting women. So fear of rejection, fear of loneliness, fear of unsafety, fear of inadequacy, and fear of social pressure. So these are all very common fears. And I want you guys to see, okay, maybe where you guys used to stand and come to a conclusion of what you guys will continue and take action on to get better with. Do you guys want to add to this at all?
Yeah, I think a lot of these kind of beliefs, the way of overcoming it is challenging / testing the belief. Because a lot of it is we believe in doomsday scenarios, we overthink, we overworry. Now, but let's say there is validity, then we need to address that. But 90% of the time or 95% of the time, it's all mental. So actually, can we go back to the list? So someone give me one of those beliefs.
Sure. Number 10.
All right, I don't want to ruin all the progress I made with her or come off creepy, so I rarely or never sexually escalate. So, well, will that escalating ruin the progress I've made with her? Will it come off creepy by escalating, right? So, I'll test it. One girl, I'll be like, you know what? I'm going to fucking escalate. Let's see what happens. If it comes off creepy, now it's not a fear, it's not a, oh God, it's not whatever. It's a attachment, like, I understand that comes off creepy. Now let me just not escalate. Well, that doesn't work either. Now it doesn't go anywhere. Now nothing happens, right? So instead of it based on a wild fear or like, oh God, whatever, now it's those, okay, well, what's the right formula? What's the right way to escalate in a way that gives her a good experience? So the point of this is, instead of wondering and having fear, lean into the fear under the understanding that no matter what, you will be okay. All right, you're gonna be all right, and make sure these thoughts, these mindsets of how things work or whatever. I'm a nice guy. I gotta overgive. I have to undergive. I gotta be hard to get. I gotta show a lot of affection. I don't know where she stands. What have you tried asking where she stands? Have you tried always assuming she stands bad? Always assuming she stands good? Finding, like through the testing, you can have real, every time you have these thoughts, go, what is it based on? That's the kind of the challenge it should be. Is it based on your own experiences, testing, seeing for yourself, or is it just a random, I feel it, and I just don't want to take action because of it. This is confusing. I thought the girl emotionally escalates and leads physically towards sex. The woman leads emotionally towards relationship and what is and beyond.
All right. So don't let limiting beliefs hold you back. Jared did an excellent job kind of explaining this, but basically, limiting beliefs can look like, I would approach her, but she's probably not interested or busy or has a boyfriend. I'm not attractive enough, rich enough, tall enough to attract her. So now I want you guys to think of your emotions as teachers, right? So why, I listened to this podcast, Hidden Brain, recently, and they were talking about anxiety and just like negative self-talk. If negative self-talk was so bad, why on an evolutionary standpoint would it have been taken out of us, right? If there's no purpose of negative self-talk, why, what's the purpose? What's the gift? And what they've realized is that people who act on their negative self-talk and start challenging it and start taking actions to combat and see what the other side looks like, those are the ones that succeed, right? So negative self-talk isn't all bad. It's a tool. It's a tool to use to propel yourself forward, not stay where you are. I think a lot of us, especially guys who fall into like nice guy frame or whatnot, is instead of trying something different, we're doubling down on what we know doesn't work. I just got to be nicer. I just gotta do this differently or do that differently, right? But it's really, you're doing the same exact actions over and over again and just doubling down on what you know is not working for you, right? So I really want to get you guys in the mindset of trying to challenge yourself and thinking, okay, what is the opposite end of this? How can I do the other thing? How can I try something new and go back and assess the data, see where you guys are at with it, right? So the behavior is, I talked to a girl and I got rejected. So the feeling is bruised ego. The limiting belief is I have no value, right? But what's a healthier perspective, right? A healthier perspective is, okay, maybe she wasn't right for me. Maybe I need to change up my opener. Maybe I need to, learn from other guys that are doing it, that are working, come to these more classes, right? Hear from us, learn from us. I got to try something. Another gift is maybe I have the gift of trying new things to make better connections with someone else, right? I only meet women in bars and clubs or on online dating. So you feel disconnected, bored, understimulated. So now your limiting belief is women aren't capable of having deep conversations, right? I just can't seem to get them. Okay. Well, if you're only meeting girls at bars and nightclubs and through online dating, yes, it is a little bit harder, and Jared might disagree with it, but it is a little bit hard to get those deep conversations when you're in a loud nightclub, right? So let's go somewhere else. How can you challenge the behavior instead of staying in the limiting belief? Right? So I love this. I read this actually on the side of a bus once, but wisdom equals belief plus doubt. So your limiting belief, it might be, I have no value, right? Your limiting belief might be, women aren't capable of having deep conversations, or dating is much harder for men than it is for women. You can believe that, but if you want to be wise, the wisest people know that they are not 100% right. There's always going to be doubt. So that doubt is going to be the thing that's going to start challenging these thoughts, right? And then patience with yourself. I don't know what I don't know. So not being so hard on yourself. And then, of course, how would my ideal self react? Okay. So traits that attract a healed, mature, high value woman, right? So he has a strong sense of self. He knows he's solely responsible for his own needs and wants. He acts on internal validation and takes external validation into consideration. He is comfortable with his masculinity and his sexuality. He is not approval driven and does what is right, even when it's uncomfortable. He sets and holds boundaries, even with the prettiest of women. He gives without the expectation to get in return. He views women with equal respect, empowers them, and empathizes with their experience. He empowers his fellow man with collaborative, not competitive nature. He provides and protects the ones that he loves. He knows he is still lovable despite his mistakes, flaws, and imperfections. He prioritizes himself first, not investing his time and energy into people, women that are not receptive. He is open to new ways of thinking that lead to growth, right? So I want you guys to take a minute and reflect on this list. I want you guys to jot down 3+ lines, whatever, that really speak to you. And I want you to change the word he to I. These are your new manifestations. These are your new principles. If you have these written down and you start acting on them, I want you to speak these into existence, change them out regularly so they stay fresh, and keep them where you can see them. Is there one, and if you guys want, you can put in the chat one that you really like, that you identify with?
Gives without expectation, again in return. I like that. As a universal success law, when you give without the expectation of return, you get way more. It's one of the most selfish things you can do.
Mm-hmm.
I like the excellent internal validation and takes external validation into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, we got these down. Good to move on. Okay. So best practices of how to attract the girl by standing out. The further you define who you are, the easier it will be to stand out. So define your flavor. So this is what we were talking about by modeling yesterday, right? How can you define your sense of self while still understanding, okay, this part doesn't work. Let's continue to try on new clothes. Let's try on new things, new actions, new, methods, new methodologies, strategies to actually change the results that you're getting, right? The whole idea is not to carbon copy Jared or Cosmo or Dale or whoever. The whole idea is to learn from us, reflect back on yourself, and figure out your own unique flavor. And that is going to be the formula for standing out. I know Jared wants to talk about this. Elicit values and display attributes.
I mean, everybody knows the attraction ladder. I hope. Who doesn't know what the attraction ladder is? Drop a 1 if you have no idea what the attraction ladder is. Okay, good job, everybody. God damn it, Adam. There's always one. Damn it, Nelson, you're trolling. Nelson, you're fucking trolling. Okay, I was about to bitch slap Nelson. Adam, after this, reach out to me on James. Yeah, fuck you. James, Adam, reach out to me on my Facebook or my Instagram. Instagram, the Jared Lawrence. Facebook, Jared Psych Lawrence. I'm going to give you guys my copy of the Psychology of Modern Flirting free of charge. Just being part of this workshop, you're going to get your hands on it. Just remind me. I'll send you that book that I wrote. The attraction ladder is the emotional progression you're going to take a girl through that makes her ultimately want to choose you. It is the emotions you give, right? But even in that book, and which is something to overlook when I talk about attraction, the engine behind it all is illicit values and display attributes. Because if you take away illicit values and display attributes, the attraction ladder makes the assumption that every girl is the same. And that's not true. And you can't just run the same shit, the same lines, same stuff in every girl and expect to get every girl. If you want to get every girl and you want to do a high level calibration, this is the key heart of the whole thing. And what it means is eliciting values means you are playing Sherlock Holmes. You are noticing things about her. The way she looks, how does she have her hair done, the way she talks, her fashion, who's she surrounding herself with, what she's drinking, does she have an accent? Every single thing a girl does, says, acts, appears, she's telling you what her values are. Real quick, if a girl has a country accent, I can make a reasonable guess based on other prompts and cues that she might be Christian with Christian values. Where I'm going to find a nice Jewish girl in Kentucky, right? Like, but I can connect the dots. You know who's a master at this is Albert. It's literally why it's the master of why he's so good at his game is he's probably the best I've seen at this. In Cold Approach, he can elicit girls' values insanely well. Just connecting the dots, figuring out what it makes her. It can be sneaky. It can be like noticing, like I said, like an accent, or it can be outright qualifying her, asking her, getting to know her, like the normal shit. There are no eliciting value routines. It is called just getting to fucking know her, being observant and seeing, okay, this is what she's talking about, right? Now, once you've figured out her values, this is what she likes to do, what she cares about. This is what is important to her, meaningful. This is how she spent her time. It is your job now, it is your job now to display attributes that show her you have those values. If you can tell she's a cheerleader and she's very sporty and she's super fit, you better display some athletic or fitness or some kind of attribute that shows you're also in that camp. Because remember, birds of a feather flock together. So that's where the game comes in. What does she value? And then can you display attributes that showcase those values? If you can do that, she will pick you every single time. Yep. And now we're going to go into, Jamie, we're going to go into qualifying her.
So qualifying her, that goes back into, okay, what are ways that you can hint? This is kind of like, I feel like where you are the one that's actually showing signals, right? So like you're hinting at what you want and seeing how she responds, right? So if you're like, yeah, like, you know, I'm thinking of like a stupid example, but like, I love, you know, a home cooked meal, right? Like I love, you know, like warm meal, coming home to that. If the girl's going to hear that, if she's into you, she's going to be like, oh my God, I love cooking. Like cooking is amazing. Like I love doing it. I love feeding people. Like she will start trying to be that person that you've subtly hinted of the type of woman that you want. Does that make sense? So in that being, and again, this goes back to further defining your sense of self, plus using in further defining your sense of self, the relationship trait spreadsheet, using that as almost ideas of how to qualify her, right? So like, for example, Anna and Jared, Anna wanted a girl that's nerdy. So being able to talk about like, yeah, no, I watched this anime show. Anna is going to be like, oh my God, I love anime. Like, you know, I have to show you this show, So in a way, you're almost using that relationship spreadsheet to qualify her, using those key points to bring into conversation to see how she responds. And that'll be the signal that she's going to give you to move forward, to progress, to stack forward. Do you want to add to that at all?
I mean, I wouldn't start with anime if you're nerdy. I would ease into that with like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Everybody likes Harry Potter.
I think it started with Marvel.
Whatever.
Marvel. I'm just saying, for my nerds out there, there's a nerd ladder to go through. You don't just jump right into anime. That's like asking for anal on the first date, Jamie. You gotta.
What's wrong with that? Okay. So being vulnerable, putting yourself out there and not being dependent on the outcome for validation. So again, a lot of guys, it's like the V word. They're like vulnerable, no, right? But again, time and time again, when girls are interviewed or girls are, you know, all the statistics, they want a man who is vulnerable. So where is the discrepancy? I think it's how a lot of guys define being vulnerable. So what I call strategically vulnerable, it can look like just saying a joke that may or may not land. Is that being vulnerable? Yes, right? Physically escalating, even though there's a possibility that she could say no. Now, obviously, with what we've taught you, this shouldn't be happening, right? But either way, you want to continue to stack forward and to lead. Storytelling, knowing that some stories are going to cause intrigue and some stories might, you know, cause boredom, but you are, again, using that as data of how to improve and what to do away with. Saying and doing something that is right in the situation, not simply because what you think she wants to hear. So this is a common line that I hear from a lot of my clients that have had successes. They'll come back and be like, Jamie, I have a girlfriend. Jamie, I'm dating someone. I'm in a situationship. I'm hooking up with someone, whatever. And I first say, what worked? What worked for you? And time and time again, they always say the same thing. I stopped paying attention to I stopped doing the thing that I thought she wanted to hear. I stopped doing the thing that I think she wanted to hear. And I started doing something that I wanted to say. I leaned back into myself. And that's a huge power shift dynamic, right? So you are now, instead of placing all the power on her, you're going back and you're saying, I'm going to be myself, be authentic, say what I want to say, and then getting her receptive to those levels. Obviously, making sure that you're on a trajectory of results that actually work. Do you want to add to that, Jared?
Yeah, I mean, I think the macro, because we're getting very, very specific with it, but the macro here is you got to look at vulnerability differently than just being a bitch at times and like crying and whatever. Being vulnerable is taking risks. It can be masculine. It can be strategic, as Jamie's saying. Ultimately, I want you guys understanding the value of it and the why versus just doing shit to do it. Like, if anybody here goes up to a girl on the approach, now granted, hell, I could even say approaching is being vulnerable, honestly, right? But if you're going up to a girl on approach and just like trying to be very vulnerable off the top, then you're not understanding the why. You're not getting what we're doing here. The idea is the the relationship matching or pair bonding, if you want to get all nerdy, is you are showing her why you're the perfect match for her. And you're not just like, I am, because I'm awesome and I'm entitled. Like, no, you have to prove it to her. Sorry, not sorry. You got to show her. You have to display the attributes. And the other side of it is you're making sure she's the right one for you. When you do that properly and you combine these two, congratulations, you now are going into a good relationship. And a lot of that is, as Jamie's saying, is as you go through, you're going to have to be vulnerable through that process. Because if you're not, I'll give you one last disclaimer. If you're not vulnerable, and you like, even me telling what kind of relationship I wanted, like if you get with the girls or dating seriously, a boyfriend, girlfriend, or us moving in together or whatever, any steps you take, you will not be doing it from authenticity, and you will regret it, and it will like feel like not you. If you try to hide it, your desire, if you try to hide like what you actually want here, and then, or you go along, or the opposite, you go along with it when you don't feel it, as Anna was talking about in her, like, where she's like, oh, I love you too. I'm like, I don't really feel it. That wasn't being, no offense, that wasn't being vulnerable in that moment.
Yeah.
She was just like, I'm just gonna go along with it. I'm not gonna actually speak my mind and say right here. And ultimately what happened, the relationship did not work.
Right. Okay.
It was like, good stuff, good
All
stuff.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. A high value male is one who sets and holds boundaries. So what is a boundary? It's an action that is done by others that is or isn't accepted by you. So a boundary isn't about controlling other people's actions, rather what you will and won't tolerate from someone. So without boundaries, people may take advantage of you because you haven't set limits on how you expect to be treated. Right? So setting boundaries. I want to play this clip. I really love it. And it might make you rethink this.
We fell
Can you guys hear
madly in
this?
love,
Yeah.
and I loved the dramatic exit. There's nothing I craved more than like, the first year you're working out your kinks. I loved it. We'd get in a fight because we would fight a lot. And I'd like yell something, then I'd slam the bedroom door, then I'd slam the front door, then I'd get in my car, and then I'd skid out the driveway, and then I'd just go like sit around the corner in my car. And it felt so good. And I realized how incredibly toxic it was only after he pointed it out. 3 months into our relationship, he was like, yeah, you can't leave anymore during fights. I'm not going to do that. And I was like, what? He's like, you can't do that. I'm not going to have a relationship. He has a very high standard.
Wow,
and
that's
a
impressive.
strong code of ethics. He's like, no, I have more respect for myself than to be I love you, but I'm not going to do that my whole life. And I was like,
Was that attractive when he said that?
Very.
So then he said, but here's how evolved he is. He said, let's just help you. You're not a good fighter. And I always thought I was, because I
Because you-
won.
Right.
He's like, no, people can't do that. Our marriage won't survive. And everything he was saying was making so much sense. And I was like, damn, this guy.
Well, he's an exception to the rule, it sounds like.
Yeah, but
I'm
it's,
too stupid to have thought of
you
it
know,
anyway.
it means people can get there. So he said, how about the next time we fight, you're allowed to leave the room, but not the house. And I was like, okay, fine. The next fight, I left the room, I slammed the bedroom door, couldn't leave the front door. And I'm standing at the front door going like, I want to leave so bad, but I really love him. And he told me I couldn't. And he said it was a deal breaker for him. So I got to stay in the house. I got to compromise.
Did he have the little white flags up like for the dog fence where you couldn't go past them?
In my head, he did.
Oh,
In my head, he did. It was, and because I knew that he said to me, I have more respect for myself than to do this my whole life. So then the next time we fought, he was like, now that you've done that, he's like, now you can't leave the room. He's like, you can stop talking, but you can't leave the room. So then we'd like have an argument and I'd just sit there and then I'd like mean text him. Just like, cause I didn't want to talk to him anymore, but I would like text him. This is getting very personal, guys. But
no, this is fast.
All right, so basically you guys got the gist of it, but I want, this is what I mean by how holding boundaries is sexy. Like what I don't know about you, Anna, but I love it when a guy kind of puts me in my place when I'm being fucking ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? Like I love that because it shows me that this man has high standards and I want to fall into those high standards. I like that, right? Because I value myself. So in that, it's just a really great way of looking, okay, how can setting boundaries brings you closer?
because when
So-
we first met,
No. Okay. So I want you guys, this is gonna be our final exercise. I want you guys to write your boundaries list. Reflect on past relationships, situationships to guide you on what worked, what didn't in the past. I want you to ask yourself, what will you only tolerate from women from now on? Instead of focusing on what you no longer want, instead declare to the universe what you will only accept from now on, right? So it's helpful to identify where you've been, the source of past unhealthy patterns. And you can see those examples there. We're gonna take about 5-10 minutes, and we'll be back.